It is a grey afternoon in Bristol, England, in the year 1973. A psychologist named Richard Gregory is walking past a small café on St. Michael's Hill. He glances at the tiled wall beside the doorway, and something stops him mid-step. The rows of black and white tiles, perfectly rectangular, appear to slope and wedge like the teeth of a saw. Gregory knows the tiles are straight. He can see the mortar lines with his own eyes. And yet no matter how long he stares, the horizontal joints refuse to lie flat. They tilt, they diverge, they converge, as if the wall itself were quietly warping in the afternoon light. In that moment, a new chapter of visual science begins. Gregory returns with a camera and a research assistant, Priscilla Hurd. Together, they photograph the wall from multiple angles. Back in the laboratory at the University of Bristol, they measure the image. The tiles are square. The mortar lines are parallel. And still, the brain insists otherwise. In 1979, Gregory and Hurd published their findings in the journal Perception. They give the illusion a name that will stick for decades. They call it the Café Wall Illusion, after the humble Bristol tea shop that sparked their curiosity. The paper becomes a landmark in the study of how human vision constructs, rather than simply records, the world. The illusion itself is deceptively simple. Rows of alternating black and white squares are stacked one above the other. Between each row runs a thin band of grey mortar. When each row is shifted horizontally by roughly half a tile, the mortar lines appear to tilt at a slight angle. Cover one row with your hand, and the illusion vanishes instantly. But Gregory was not the first to notice such a thing. A near-identical pattern had been reported in 1898 by an observer named A.H. Pierce, writing in the American Journal of Psychology. Pierce called it the illusion of the kindergarten patterns. His observation, however, drifted into obscurity for the better part of a century. What Gregory brought to the puzzle was a modern neuroscience. By the 1970s, researchers understood that the retina does not send raw images to the brain. Instead, neurons in the eye and visual cortex extract edges, contrasts, and orientations. The world we see is a reconstruction, assembled from these fragments in fractions of a second. Gregory proposed that the Café Wall Illusion exploits this reconstruction process. The key ingredient, he argued, is the grey mortar line. Its brightness sits precisely between the black and white tiles on either side. This intermediate value confuses the early visual system, and small errors in edge detection begin to accumulate. To understand why, consider what happens at the boundary of a black tile and a grey line. The visual neurons detecting that edge respond slightly differently than those at a white tile's boundary. Dark regions appear to swell inward, light regions appear to shrink. The result is a tiny distortion, invisible in isolation, but devastating when repeated across a wall. Now imagine hundreds of these tiny distortions, all pulling in the same direction along a single mortar line. The eye's local errors align. What was a straight horizontal joint appears to tilt upward on one side and downward on the other. The brain, faithful to its own faulty inputs, sees a wedge where geometry insists on a rectangle. In 1980, the vision scientists Michael Morgan and Barbara Molden extended Gregory's analysis. Working at the University of Cambridge, they modelled the illusion using mathematical filters that mimic neurons in the primary visual cortex. Their simulations reproduced the tilt with striking accuracy. The illusion, they showed, is not a quirk of attention, but a consequence of the wiring itself. The mortar's exact shade turns out to be critical. If the grey is too dark, matching the tiles, the illusion fades. If it is too light, it fades again. Only when the mortar sits near the average luminance of black and white does the wedge effect reach its full strength. Gregory called this the border locking condition. The thickness of the mortar also matters. Thin lines produce a stronger illusion than thick ones, and the offset between rows must be near half a tile. Line them up perfectly and the wall stands still. Shift them just so, and the geometry seems to buckle before your eyes. The Café Wall Illusion soon escaped the laboratory. Architects and designers began to notice it in real buildings. In Melbourne, Australia, the Port 1010 apartment complex incorporates deliberate café wall patterning on its facade. Passers-by report a subtle sense of motion, as though the building itself were breathing against the sky. In cognitive science, the illusion became a testing ground for theories of perception. Researchers used it to probe how the brain balances local and global information. Individual neurons see only tiny patches of the world, yet somehow, from these narrow glimpses, a coherent scene emerges. The Café Wall shows what happens when that assembly quietly goes wrong. Richard Gregory himself saw the illusion as a window into a deeper truth. Perception, he argued throughout his career, is a form of hypothesis. The brain does not passively receive images. It actively guesses at the world using shortcuts honed over millions of years. Illusions are moments when those guesses become visible. Gregory died in 2010 at the age of 86. His obituaries in the Times and The Guardian remembered him as one of the great popularizers of vision science. But among his colleagues, the Bristol Café Wall remained his signature discovery. It was proof, they said, that scientific insight could still be found on an ordinary street, in an ordinary afternoon. The original café on St. Michael's Hill has long since closed. Its distinctive tiled wall, however, has been preserved in photographs and reproduced in textbooks around the world. Generations of students have puzzled over the image, reaching for rulers to convince themselves that the lines really are straight. The wall, silent and geometric, keeps its secret in plain sight. Today, the Café Wall Illusion continues to inspire research in neuroscience, computer vision, and even artificial intelligence. Engineers building machine vision systems have found that their algorithms fall for the same trick as human eyes. The distortion appears wherever edge detection meets contrast, whether in a brain or in a neural network trained on millions of images. And so the humble tiled wall of a Bristol tea shop endures as a lesson written in black, white, and grey. Straight lines bend, not because the world is broken, but because seeing is an act of construction. Every glance, every glimpse, every certainty is a hypothesis awaiting revision. And sometimes, on an ordinary street, the hypothesis quietly betrays itself.